The heart monitor flatlined for 3 seconds. Not enough time to declare death, but long enough for Hope to feel like it had already left the room. Rain slammed against the emergency room windows as if the storm itself was trying to break inside and change the outcome. Nurses froze. A senior surgeon lowered his head. 22 doctors stood around a hospital bed where a young boy lay motionless, his small chest barely rising, his skin turning the pale gray that meant the fight was almost over. No one had an answer. No one had another plan. And then the doors of the ER burst open, and a single father, soaked, shaking, terrified, stepped forward and whispered something that made the entire room fall silent. Before the story begins, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, please take one moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive and reaching hearts around the world. Ethan Carter had not slept in 2 days. His eyes were bloodshot, his beard uneven from forgetting to shave, his hands trembling from too much coffee and too little hope. He was only 36, but in that moment, standing in the emergency room hallway of St. Michael's Hospital, he looked 10 years older. His son Noah was 8 years old. The boy had collapsed at school earlier that afternoon. No warning, no history of serious illness. Just a sudden seizure, then unconsciousness, then an ambulance ride that felt like it took a lifetime. By the time they reached the hospital, Noah's body had begun shutting down. His heart rhythm was unstable. His lungs were failing. His brain was swelling. The ER team worked on him for over 4 hours. 22 doctors, neurologists, cardiologists, pulmonary specialists, trauma surgeons. Each one came with experience, authority, and confidence, and each one left the bedside eventually with the same look, uncertainty turning slowly into defeat. They tried medications, they tried cooling therapy, they tried advanced ventilator settings. They tried experimental treatments approved only in the most desperate cases. Nothing worked. Ethan watched from the corner of the room, his hands gripping the strap of Noah's backpack, the same Spider-Man backpack his son insisted on wearing every day, even though the zipper was broken and the colors were fading. Inside were the small things of a child's world: crayons, a half-eaten granola bar, a folded paper airplane, the last thing his wife had packed before. She died in a car accident 3 years earlier. Ethan had raised Noah alone since then. 2 jobs, night shifts, missed birthdays, burned dinners, school meetings he barely made. But every morning he woke his son up with the same words: "It's just you and me, buddy, and that's enough." Now, watching the machines around Noah beep slower and slower, Ethan was no longer sure anything was enough. At 11:42 p.m., the lead physician finally approached him. Her voice was gentle but exhausted. She explained that they were running out of options, that his son's brain oxygen levels were dropping dangerously, that if the next intervention failed, they would have to prepare him for the worst. Ethan felt the hallway tilt. The walls seemed too close, the air too thin. He nodded because he didn't know what else to do. Then he remembered something. 2 years earlier, Noah had nearly drowned during a summer camp trip. The counselor had panicked. Ethan had arrived before the ambulance and performed CPR for what felt like forever. A paramedic later told him that something he had done, a small adjustment in Noah's airway position, may have saved his life. Since then, Ethan had taken every first aid course, emergency training seminar, and online medical class he could find. Not because he wanted to be a hero, but because the world had already shown him how fragile everything could be. So when he saw Noah's oxygen numbers falling again, and the doctor stepping back in silent frustration, something inside him snapped. He walked forward. The room stilled. 22 medical professionals turned toward a single exhausted father. Ethan's voice shook, but he forced it steady. He told them about the drowning, about the airway technique he had learned, about the positioning that improved oxygen flow when swelling blocked normal breathing. He asked if they had tried rotating Noah's head slightly and adjusting the tube pressure the way he had been taught in a specialized emergency response workshop. There was hesitation, some confusion, a few skeptical looks, but one young resident's eyes widened. She whispered something to the lead physician. The lead physician paused, then nodded. They repositioned Noah's head. They adjusted the ventilator. They recalibrated the oxygen flow. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the monitor beeped faster. Oxygen levels rose. Heart rhythm steadied. The room exhaled together. Ethan collapsed into a chair, his knees finally giving out, his face buried in his hands as silent sobs shook his body. But the crisis was not over. Over the next several hours, complications followed one after another, swelling in the brain, pressure in the lungs, dangerous infections threatening his bloodstream. Each time the team rushed in, and each time Ethan refused to leave the hallway, afraid that the moment he stepped away would be the moment everything ended. The sun rose. Nurses changed shifts. The world outside continued as if nothing extraordinary was happening. By the next afternoon, Noah's condition stabilized just enough to move him to the intensive care unit. Ethan finally allowed himself to sit beside his son's bed. He brushed the hair off Noah's forehead, noticing the tiny scar above his eyebrow. From the time he fell off his bike, learning to ride without training wheels. He whispered stories about the fishing trip they were supposed to take next weekend, about the pancakes he would make when Noah woke up, about how proud he was of him for being brave even while asleep. 3 days passed. On the 4th morning, Noah opened his eyes, just barely, but it was enough. Recovery was slow, weeks in the hospital, months of therapy. There were setbacks, fear-filled nights, and moments when Ethan thought he would lose him again. But little by little, Noah's laughter returned. His appetite came back. His strength grew. One evening, the lead physician sat with Ethan in the cafeteria. She told him that what he remembered, that small adjustment, that training he never expected to use, had changed everything, that without it, his son likely would not have survived. Ethan listened quietly. Then he smiled. He told her that when his wife died, he felt like the world had taken every piece of his future, that raising Noah alone had nearly broken him, that he had spent so many nights wondering if he was enough, but now he knew the answer. He was. 1 year later, Ethan stood at Noah's school science fair watching his son proudly explain a model of the human heart to a group of classmates. Noah wanted to be a doctor now. He said he wanted to help people the way they had helped him, and the way his dad had helped him when everything else failed. Ethan felt tears in his eyes as he clapped. Life had not become easier. Money was still tight. Work was still exhausting. Fear still visited him in the quiet hours of the night. But hope had returned, and sometimes hope is everything. Before this story ends, I have one small request from the heart. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you love, if it made you believe again in the strength of ordinary people, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means more than you know, and please leave a comment with the words, "I believe in hope," because somewhere in the world someone needs to read that today. The storm outside the hospital had long passed, but inside that emergency room, on one unforgettable night, a father's love had done something no machine, no title, no degree could accomplish. It reminded everyone what it truly means to save a life.